Hey, I like your eye makeup.
Thank you. Thanks. I thought I'd get in the mood for sisters because I'm actually super nervous. All
Hey, well, it looks really good.
right. Thank you. Thanks. So you're in the middle of your world tour.
Yeah, so we just did a whole bunch of European stuff,
Yeah.
um, and now we've got festivals across the summer in various European places, um, like Germany, France, but then also like some slightly unexpected ones, Crete, which is Greece, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Luna Festival in Germany, which is really good.
Okay.
Yeah, so a few things leading up to the October when we come and see you guys.
Yeah. Awesome. We're so looking forward to it, and we also sort of have a bit of a special relationship because of Dylan Smith.
Of course.
Yeah. So he's been around the Brisbane scene, so we're excited about that. Um, have there been any Spinal Tap moments on the tour this year?
Always. I
Yeah.
mean, always. It's as anyone in a touring band will tell you, the accuracy of that film is terrifying. Um, I'm not sure what the history of Christopher Guest and who's the guy who plays Nigel and who wrote it with I believe Michael McKean and Harry Shearer. I don't know if they were in bands, but they must have certainly been around bands. I mean, they actually play the instruments and they wrote the songs in the movie, so they
Yeah.
must have some kind of band experience. And there's historically there's reports about people who went to see the movie at the time in bands and who were convinced it was based on them.
Yeah.
Um, so the accuracy, yeah, is definitely there, and every day there's some sort of Spinal Tap moment, whether that be some kind of big uh, Stonehenge dwarves on stage catastrophe, or just some kind of small, amusing, dissatisfying sandwich in the dressing room drama.
Oh, yeah.
Um, every day there's something. So I think what might be quite a good idea is if at some point I actually sit down and make a list or have a diary, an ongoing diary
Oh, yeah.
of. I think that's probably the best thing to do. There might be an app or something, the
Yeah, that's right.
Spinal app, the Tap app
Yeah.
that
Fans will
that
definitely
I
know.
yeah that I could keep logging stuff in there.
Yeah. Um, so Sisters of Mercy is really unique in that you haven't actually released anything in 30 years. But what do you think is the thing that's kept your fans for this long on the same CDs? Like, what do you think is the emotional connection there? Like, why? Why have Sisters of Mercy been able to tour of three albums for so long?
It's a very good question, and I think the strength of the source material is such that people keep going back to it, and um, and they love it so much that they want to see it live,
Yeah.
regardless of how many years have passed since that recording was done. And also that again, the strength of that material brings new fans into the fold all the time. So I was when we just did these shows in Northern Europe, I was speaking to fans afterwards who were in the sort of 18 to 25 bracket, and I said to them, "How the hell do you even know about this band?"
Yeah.
And because I guess the power of the internet now means that anyone's one click away from finding you at any one time. And there isn't really the kind of the gatekeepers in place that there were perhaps when the band was in the 80s and early 90s, where you only get known if you got played on this radio station or that TV
Yeah.
show or whatever.
Yeah.
Now it's more a case of, well, how did you find out about us? And they were like, well, my favorite band talks about you, or you had a song in American Horror Story. So and people can so instantly find that music, whereas previous in the past, maybe they'd hear it and they wouldn't be able to find out what it was unless they meticulously watch the credits or whatever.
Yeah.
I even remember as a kid, I had a tape that I listened to when I was about 6 or 7, but I didn't even know what it was because it was a blank, unmarked cassette. I loved it, and no one in my house knew where the tape had come from or what the band was.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be the case now. And I didn't find out actually that it was a Steely Dan record
Okay.
until about 6 years later, which included the drama of Uncle Richard telling me that it was Supertramp, and I thought it
Yeah.
was Supertramp, right?
Actually
But
sorted out.
now,
Oh, sorry, go.
but now all I would have had to have done is just typed a line of lyric into the internet and instantly found out what it was. So I think it's a lot easier now for if any fans, whether that be new younger fans or anyone hear anything about the band, to instantly discover who it is and then start following the band is a lot easier. And I also think that because a lot of material has been written and performed live but not recorded since those recordings, is that certainly I feel with the newer stuff that we've been doing, myself, Andrew, and Dylan, in the last few years, so even when people come to the show and they don't know these new songs, it still sounds like the band they've come to see, and I think the songs are good. So I feel like we're delivering something that's what they want to see, but also they've never heard before. So it's like a quite an exciting combination of witnessing something that you know that you really like, yet it being original and not just, oh, it's that song from 1987 again.
Yeah. How are the fans receiving the new material?
Really good, and I think there's an analogy that I'm gonna try and work with here, which is that it's a bit, well, there was a Swedish reviewer who made a comment that's really resonated with me, which was that he said what you guys have done in terms of the current lineup is that you've created Sisters 4.0. So it's still the Sisters of Mercy, but it's the fourth incarnation of it, which is completely unique and new, while still being like the Sisters of Mercy. I guess the only kind of analogy I can put to it is that, say a new James Bond movie comes out, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a new actor, and there's all this, like, oh wow, is it going to be good? And what it needs to do to be good is it needs to stay faithful to the original source material of what James Bond is, whilst bringing a freshness and excitement to it. And what I'm hopeful that we're doing, if this Swedish reviewer is right, is doing just that. It's like a new actor has come to the role, has respected and understood the source material, whilst bringing something that's completely fresh.
Do you think that in order to do that, like, is the process of writing the music any different in order to keep that sort of Sisters sound? Or is it just basically, if Andrew Eldritch is involved, it will sound like the Sisters of Mercy? Or is there something that is in your process in order to stay more true to the sound?
Great question, and I think again it's a combination. I think anything that Andrew sings on will sound like the Sisters.
Yeah.
So you've already, I mean, unless it went completely extremely one way or the other musically, I think that's one thing. And the second thing is that, again, like, I'll come back to the James Bond thing. That when Dylan and I come to writing some guitar parts for it, we already, it's like we've been given the idea of writing a script for the Bond movie. You know the kind of things you need to have in it. You need to have this kind of the gadgets, the villains, whatever it is. For the movie, you know you've got to have them, yet you've got to come up with a unique story. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're bringing in the elements that we know are part of this genre, whilst bringing in a unique story.
And just referencing the AHS, because, you know, Kate Bush has just blown up on Stranger Things. And in a lot of the interviews I've read, it seemed like the sisters were quite reluctant to be involved in TV and movies. For example, Wayne's World was a big no. So how did the AHS Hotel come about?
I'm not entirely sure actually what the story was there as to how that occurred, but I guess what I will say is that I think, and all credit to him, that Andrew's quite particular about what his music is associated with.
Yeah, and that's fair.
And that's the Wayne's World one's a really interesting thing, because if it was pitched to me, hey, there's a scene where there's some teenagers or like young guys in a car driving around singing, miming, and it's just kind of goofy, and I think, well, that's not really what my music's about. And if it was pitched to me like that, I may well have said the same thing. Whereas I think if something you feel is more kind of in line with your thematic aesthetic, then you're going to be more like, I mean, it's always going to be a risk, isn't it? If someone says we're going to do this, and but I think Andrew's got a lot of integrity when it comes to what he's associated with, and that's why perhaps he hasn't ever gone out and like there's not like absurd amounts of different sorts of merchandise for the band.
Not like a car ad or something.
Exactly, and it's not used for advertising as something which isn't thematically connected with the band's ethos. and again, as there aren't ludicrous merchandise items like you go to some bands and they've got like, hey, buy our tea cozies, buy
Yeah,
our
yeah,
oven gloves.
yeah.
Um, so I think he's all. I think again, for certain bands it works. For certain bands, they can have this absurd merchandise because it's in
Hmm.
line with their brand identity of being that kind of a band.
Yeah,
Whereas I think with a band like ours, we we have certain kind of different parameters, let's
yeah,
say. And in the same way that for some bands it's okay to go out and do the, hey, we're doing this album in its entirety and we're going to dress like we did in 1985 and we're going to make everything the same. And
hmm,
for this band it's not, right?
yeah. So I'm a huge fan, and one of my favorite songs is Marianne. And I've been thinking a long time, like, what is this song about? Now, there's a lot of subtext and intertextual like lyrics in Sisters of Mercy. So I just wanted to know, number one, do you know what that song's about? And number two, do you want to hear my theory?
Well, one, I don't know what it's about.
Okay.
I do think that there's a lot of nautical imagery in it, and I find that quite intriguing.
Okay.
Um, and I'd like to hear your
All
theory.
right. Okay. So, like to me, it sounded very religious. I always had a suspicion that it was like the Marianne divinations, where they're praying to the Mother of God. And in the song, it sounds like he's talking about the pressure of life. And so my theory is he's doing the Marianne divinations and begging for death.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Could well be. It
Yeah.
could. It could. I mean, that's a sound theory. Can you think of any particular lines in the song off the top of your head, if you can? I'll put you
Yeah.
onto the spot
No, it's all
that
right.
you think give credence to that.
Well, the song's Marianne, and then it's like, bring me, bring me, bring me, sort of thing. Oh, is that the right song? Oh, now I'm freaking out.
Doesn't
Like
matter.
he's talking about the pressures a lot, and he's like, I can feel the water coming down, and can you hear me calling? And I just feel like it's like a begging for death nearly. It sounds morose, but it's such a beautiful song at the same time. So I don't read it as a very depressing song. I just think it's very beautiful, in that way. But yeah, that's just my theory. And I sort of think it would be really good because a lot of the time, like people don't get it, and I don't get it, even though I want to try, with all of the lyrics and how dense they are. So would it ever be a possibility that the sisters would actually, spell it out for their fans, maybe release a book and be like, this is what we mean. Spell it out for us idiots.
Well, that's such an interesting concept because to what degree do you think you'd be disappointed and sort of disenchanted if it was like, oh, actually, yeah, it's about this dog that lived next door, and we just thought it was
Well,
funny.
I wouldn't be.
Yeah.
I love it. If it's a dog, I want to know. You know what I
Well,
mean?
okay, maybe bad example because dogs are great.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
maybe, but if it was about just something really mundane, and then suddenly,
But we
what
know it's
then?
not. It's not going to be mundane, though. We know that. We already know that it's like so beyond our comprehension. You know what I mean? And not in a bad way. It's in a really good way, but it's so intense and so deep that it's bypassing us. And I think that's a real pity, because I want to know, you know?
Well, I think one thing that I've often, because I love writing lyrics myself, and I've often talked to Andrew about it because I find it fascinating.
Hmm.
And he says what he always enjoys in lyric writing is when there is a combination of abstraction.
Yeah.
So there's really kind of the imagery is really abstract,
Hmm.
yet there's a certain level of specificity to
Yeah.
things that make them really vivid. So you could talk about in great clarity about a color or a texture, but not about where this is taking place or with whom.
Yeah.
And so there's this really, and what that allows you as a listener is that you can take these really kind of vivid imagery, and this really vivid imagery, and you're able to apply it to yourself because it hasn't been debunked by saying, oh, this is not about you, listener. This is about this, and this.
Yeah.
And I think he's very good at that, of creating that perfect balance of abstraction and specific imagery
Yeah.
that captivates people.
Okay. And of course, like I'm trying to avoid asking about a new album because, I'm sure you get asked that a lot. But I guess the other question that relates to that is what are your beliefs in regards to the responsibility of like intelligent musicians to create in these times?
Responsibility to themselves or to others, or
To others.
as in, okay, so as in it's like a duty for a musician who has got the ability to create for others in a kind of altruistic manner to help people.
Yeah, I guess in a way of like, if you've got intelligence, right? And unfortunately with the pandemic and everything, it's been revealed that there's a lot of misinformation. And so I guess that's sort of where I wonder about the responsibility of intelligent, creative people.
To inform or to just simply create so that people have
To
got
create,
something.
to create, not
Right.
inform, I think create.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess creativity is something that you can only do if you feel compelled to do it. It's not something that you can really. It's not like a task. It's not like, right, I need to clear a bunch of stuff out of that room, so I'm going to go do it.
Yeah.
Inspiration and
There's that
creativity.
thing where it was like, if Trump got elected, then he would feel compelled to do it. Trump's been and gone. So then it's like, well, I understand we can't force you to release an album, but is there a sense of, could you have informed a bit more? Could you have put out more in order to have affected the population,
See, yeah. Well, we've been really prolific in terms of our writing over the pandemic. We've currently been in circulation of our set list. We've got about 11 or 12 completely new songs.
Okay.
And the difference is that for the first time in 30 years, the band is playing 12 new songs that are written by that band, by those people.
Yeah.
And there's a coherency to it. And what was really interesting was that a younger fan wrote to me, and he's 21, and he said, "Oh, I'm loving the new songs. I listen to them every day." I'm like, "Well, how?" And he goes,
Yeah.
I just create a YouTube playlist, and I walk around with it on my phone."
Yeah.
And so for him, he's got a new album in a sense.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
And so because the quality now of people's phones and the recording mean that you can actually get that fidelity of hearing versions which sound pretty good.
Yeah.
So for him, and that's his generation, that's normal. He's like, well, I just listen to it that way.
Yeah.
He'd probably prefer the definitive recorded version, but he's still able to listen to the songs. And so it sort of changes up the dynamic a bit, because 10 years ago that certainly wasn't the case. Whereas now, I mean, there's a really sort of interesting concept, but that I've sort of been informed that there's a guy, a Swedish guy, who's basically taken all these live versions and done his own recordings of them.
Oh, okay.
So that he's sort of created his own album.
All right.
Of what he's understood to be the parts by watching the live videos. All
right. Okay.
And of course, it's never going to sound like what it would sound like if we did it, but it's an interesting interpretation. And it also, I really I respect the guy's autonomy and his passion to like sit down and spend, that's literal days creating that, simply because he's so passionate about the band. So there's always ways that the music's getting out there that can be different from the process of recording an album. And you also think that we've just gone out and played these new songs to, I'm not sure what the numbers would be, but certainly tens of thousands of people over the course of the last few months. And so it is going out there, and people are experiencing
hearing it. Yeah. So what can Brisbane expect from the show?
And if it's anything like what we've just done, it will be a really nice combination of greatest hits and new songs. And the response to the new material has been so positive from people. And I think it's because, if we use that Bond analogy again, it's they like the new Bond. Yeah. So it's Ace. They're seeing their favorite movie franchise with an actor who they feel is doing a really good job. Yeah. And people have said to me that these new songs are like a combination of all the best stuff of the big three albums, with a completely new slant. So even though people don't know the songs, they're like, but this sounds like the band that I love. I'm really happy. So I think having that combination for people would be great. And we really like, we really love coming to Oz, and this will be our third time. And it's exciting for having, I think it's especially exciting for Dylan, that he, particularly getting to play venues where I think in Melbourne and Sydney, where he'd go and see bands and be like, oh my God, what if one day I could be? And now he is.
Yeah.
I think that's really exciting. And from my understanding of what he's told me and what other Australian friends have told me about being a musician, being a rock musician in Australia, is it's really, really hard to actually break out of the country with your own band. Partially because it's so isolated from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And so I think for him it's really exciting that he's been able to do that, and a big achievement for him.
Oh yeah, definitely. And we like to claim him here in Brisbane. Like, I'm not sure. I think he's actually from Sydney, but we're like, no, Dylan's from Brisbane.
But yes. So it'll be great. It'll be a great balance of new and old. And afterwards, myself, Dylan, and Dave, Ravy Davey, we usually come out and chat to people and stuff. So hang about and yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know that there's an unofficial after party happening at the Jolly Roger bar, so that's just around the corner. So I just thought I'd let you know.
Thank you for letting me know. I may well come along.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I guess that answers all my questions. So
thanks, Camilla. Good questions. Good questions.
Thank you. And also, just wanted to say, like, I found out about the sisters. I had a blank CD someone had burnt me, so it wasn't a cassette.
Nice.
It was a blank CD, and I listened to it. I'm like, who is this? But anyway, but yes, thank you so much for your time.
No, you're very welcome, and thank you for coming up with the great questions, and also thank you for spending your evening doing this, because I really appreciate it's nighttime for you. So
no, my pleasure. All right,
great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Camilla. Well, come say hi. We'll when we get to the.
Okay, for sure, we'll do. Okay.
All right, nice one.
Bye.
You too. Bye. Bye.